Anybody want to sing? Because I didn't do video music yet.
Oh,
Do,
you don't want to hear me sing.
music. All right. Hello, everybody, and thank you very, very much for joining us for our next session of Blueprints for Business. Everybody that's here, come on back up on video. Thank you for jumping off real quick and allowing me to do a quick little fancy intro. But this is all about community. Richard, how are you today, my friend?
Doing well. If you'd asked me yesterday, I'd have had a different answer, but today I am doing fantastic. Thanks, Matthew.
Amazing.
You?
So I'm doing great. We just got back from Scaling New Heights. I'm sure at some point we'll touch base onto that throughout this whole conversation. It'd be hard to not. But to kind of get us started, of course, Blueprints for Business. We've got an amazing episode this week. It's all about working with family, and I want to say thank you to Jane with Forwardly for sponsoring this episode. This whole series that we're doing throughout the whole year. Thank you very, very much. Jane, how about for you? How was Scaling New Heights for you? Did you have a good time? I know you did because I saw you.
Yes. I think a lot of people here probably saw me who were there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Also, I do want to mention we do have a second sponsor for this episode as well, GoCo.io, who is helping out. They are an HR software that helps with payroll, and they're also helping out. So make sure I'm going to drop a link, and they are trying to show up more for accountants, and I love that for them. So make
Do
sure
we have one of their team members here that we can call out on also?
they were hoping to, but I think one of them got pulled into a meeting, so isn't going to be able to.
Stupid meetings. This is the.
I know.
I'm going to throw my lightning bolt at them. So,
Yeah.
with that in mind, I would like to bring on and introduce our two guest hosts for this specific week, which is Linda Artesani and Sarah Prevost. You both probably know. If you don't know them, I'm shocked. They collectively have the Proper Trust. They also have the Accounting Law Lab. I cannot do you all justice. Linda, Sarah, would you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Go ahead, Sarah. She always does that to me, so I'm getting even.
Well, Sarah Prevost. For those of you that don't know, I'm based in Portland, Oregon. Everyone seems to think I'm based out of Florida, and that's okay. But I used to
thought you
live
were
in
in
Palm
Florida.
Springs. I know, but I used to live in Palm Springs, which I should be back there. I want to.
What?
Yes,
I had no
used to
idea.
live there. Yeah. And I hooked up with this lovely lady. I don't know, umpteenth years ago. I forget. It's not worth even remembering. It's just having so much fun with her. So, and together we're known as the legal ladies. I hear often. I hear the reference of that. And yeah, and I work with a lot of family members.
We actually won an award today. Deb Kilsheimer anointed us the top, what did she say? The top legal accountants of the world.
Yes.
That's what she told us today. And I said, where'd you hear that? She goes, I made it up, but I think you are. I'm like, okay, thank you. You and
her.
Sarah are. So,
So sweet.
I would take great pride in that. I truly, Linda and I have been friends for a very long time. Sarah and I have been friends a long time. I've enjoyed watching Linda as you evolve your practice and turned into a niche specialist and becoming that primary person when it comes to legal accounting. And what's really exciting about today and having you all on is how you have actually brought your family members in to help with the building and the growth of your practice. I can say from my own past experience, hiring friends or family sometimes it can be very difficult and challenging. It can stress relationships for sure. And, so to be able to figure out how to work with family, you are much better people than I am. And mom, if you're watching this, I love you, but sorry, like it's tough. So, let's start off.
when we started out, Sarah, we started working, we started building the practice and getting more and more clients. And I remember saying to her one day, I wish I could clone you and have another Sarah. And then all of a sudden in walked Nicole. And I was like, oh, yay. And then didn't we kind of joke and say, you got any more? So we kind of tapped out their whole family, but that's okay.
Not the whole family, but
not the whole. No, we have
The whole family.
Yeah. It's a big family. So
but we did. And we ended up having Nicole came in and she started working with us. And then we added Myrna. And we have, of course, the mamas, they're famous. They're more famous than we are. And they work with us too. I've also worked with my daughter, Tammy, who did pop in with my grandkids, but they were making bad faces. So I think she kind of took the camera off. But there they are. So Tammy works with me on the Artesani accounting side. Oh, I thought he was crying. Okay. So that's Shane and Aiden. Future maybe employees of Artesani accounting. I don't know. But yeah, so Tammy and I have worked together. She started when she was really young, and then she decided she wanted to go work at a bank because she wanted to work with people one-on-one instead of working like remotely, which is really hard to work remotely. You have to be the kind of person that can work remotely and not really have, like, you get up and you walk across the room to your own office. It's really hard, and you need that dedicated space. And that was kind of one of the things that I think she had a little bit of trouble with, was being young and not wanting to. She wanted to work with people, and then she worked at a bank and realized that wasn't really a great idea, that she really didn't like people after she worked at the bank. So
Like people working there.
I think when you get a raise at a bank and you work as a teller and you get 5 cents, that kind of really is eye-opening to that. I don't know if I want to do this kind of work, but yeah.
So of those here, either on, if you're here, raise your hand, or if you're watching externally, say so in the comments. And when I'm looking off to the side, it's so I can bring engagement in. Who here has worked with family before? Who currently still works with family now?
This later.
Okay.
Normally this group.
So good to kind of see this side of it. Hey, Nancy, it's good to see you on here as well. Nancy's another fellow 805er, Santa Barbara, of course. So, so Sarah, you have done a phenomenal job ingraining many members of your family. Do you have any tips of how others can do it successfully?
Well, for one, ethnically, we have a very a nice way of talking with each other. So I believe that just as an immigrant family, Arab Americans, you just naturally work together. That's just what you do. You can tear each other apart. You can love each other, all in the same sentence almost. We really do know where our boundary lines are. We may not agree on some things, but ultimately, the value of input, the value of constructive feedback with each other, if that's what you want to call it. And it's not, Italian family, exactly, like Greek family. It's not always, sometimes it's not always roses, but that's okay. You know it going in. The thing that I feel like is the difference is, the work ethic. And I know exactly how you would work. And it's very similar to my own work ethic. So that's been the beauty for us. And there's a level of understanding that's slightly different. I was just thinking about this the other day prior to this show. It's like, oh, there was some stuff that came up for a couple of the family members in Linda and I's company. And without saying much, I already knew. I knew by the way that they were speaking. I knew that something was going on. And so I was like, oh, okay, just take the grace, do it. It's not like I do it any differently for any employee. It's just that you don't have to say much and I already know what you're going to say, or I already know, I have the expectation and the anticipation too. So I do feel that what is true though is knowing like, hey, this is the entity, we want the participation, but ultimately the liability lies on Linda and I. And we, for all employees, but it is a little bit different with family, because some people feel like they could have more, I don't know, just things that they could do differently. I'm like, no, everyone else falls in this line. Let's respectfully just do what everyone else is doing. Let's not step outside the lines or take for granted just because I'm a family member. We don't have that. We have a lot of respect for each other in this group. So, yeah.
Sir, can I ask a clarifying question?
Mm-hmm.
In your case, your family is working for you.
Yep.
I feel like one of the things that we really also should uncover and talk about today is when family is in a partnership. or when family are the co-owners or working
I've been in that.
the
Yeah.
leadership level.
Mm-hmm.
I recognize that's not the case in your world,
Yeah.
but definitely something, if anybody here in the room is in that scenario, then we should ask about, we should talk about. Alexis, I'm seeing you knew that I was gonna call on you, right? Because yeah, you and your mom work together, right?
Correct. We are partners.
And you are partners. How do you deal with the things that Sarah's talking about, like conflict and communication in that scenario?
We are probably a little different than Sarah because we're mom and daughter, and I have that like daughterly thing. She has that motherly thing. We usually like disagree, separate, think about it, and then come together and come back and kind of figure it out. So there definitely is, that mother-daughter conflict stuff, but we usually have to bend a little bit to, get closer to each other's ideal situation. So that's
It sounds like though you've put guardrails in place for
we
communication.
definitely had to do that. In the beginning, it was battles, and now we have found a way to create resolution.
Can I ask you, is it battles on how to accomplish something, or is it where does it center?
Honestly, where it really centers is her idea of running a business is very different than me.
Okay.
She is, she has the old school, in my opinion, old school mentality of, very corporate and, everybody's got to be at work at 8:01, the latest, and, those kinds of things. That's kind of the world. She's definitely changed that a lot. But have always been the like, I don't care as long as everybody's happy and getting their job done. And happiness includes customers, employees, vendors, whoever we're working with, as long as we're all happy and getting the things done that we need to get done. So it was kind of that she was very policy driven, save as much money as you can, all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, no, let's throw a party for everybody. And, so it was very different thinking.
I see. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
And Jane, don't you have experience with this as well?
I mean, to an extent. For those of you who don't know, my dad was a tax preparation and immigration consultant. So when I was 11, my parents divorced. And before that, my dad would disappear. Like he was a chronic overworker. Probably why I answer messages at 1 a.m. But what happened when my parents divorced, my dad said, okay, that's it. I'm moving the business home. And from the time I was 11 to the day he died, the business was run out of our family home. And that meant that I was answering the phone, and there wasn't an option, right? It was, you are working for the family business now. You don't just have to run out the garbage. Jane, this is our shredding pile for the week. You're in charge. I was designated shredder, but it also helped me grow. So, I mean, it was really hard growing up in a constant office, but it also taught me a lot of really good things. My dad, he used a CRM, like a customer relationship manager, before anybody ever used them. We had a digital system. We wrote down notes. Every single client that went in, he would write notes on the meeting that he had with them to remember. And I was always encouraged, book meetings, answer the phone, be polite, be professional. But at the same time, it was a home business. So yeah, but there was always conflict. I mean, it was hard, especially when he had to fire clients in our living room. That's always interesting, but it was overall a good experience. I think he would probably be very shocked to find out I work in accounting tech now. He would just, because I resisted touching anything financial. I did event planning mostly. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
So how many people here did any of you ever start off having to work for your parents? And I don't mean mowing the lawns and doing that kind of stuff, right? But who here actually worked in their parents' companies? Raise your hand.
Would an uncle's business count?
I was going to ask
Family, great point. Family's family, right? So, I would love to hear from that perspective also. Anybody who'd like to share, maybe Danielle or Ken, if you'd like to share it all.
We had a family business. My father had started it, and we had moved into my brother worked with it after I started working with it. He was older. He's the oldest brother, and he became the leader when my father retired. We brought in another brother, and I was actually given the order to go up to the other brother's business in another state and change the locks.
Oh,
I'm changing the locks when my other brother shows up and saying, okay, well, he knew that it was not me trying to, he knew that where the order came from, but that was kind of an interesting experience.
That's the kind of the dynamics. It's got to be somewhat brutal. Danielle, I'd love to hear what you would like to share.
Yeah, you say the word brutal. Yes, I can relate to that. I joined my dad and his brother's restaurant business, so let alone working for the family and a restaurant business upon graduating college. I just was directionless at that point in my life. And I was a little bit in rescue mode of saving my dad because he was working so much. And I worked at the restaurant, through college every summer, right? So like, oh, okay. So Danielle starts work on like June 1st. Here's the keys. You're a manager now. Absolutely no training manual. And I remember that first night, I was like, who locks up the restaurant? I mean, zero awareness of what I was walking into, agreeing to work 6 nights a week, Thursdays off. And so I look back on that time. I was there for 15 years. And there were some dark times personally of just feeling very stuck and not being able to leave and tell your family, your father, that you didn't want to work there anymore. But also, gosh, there were so many things I learned in hindsight now about the business. You learn marketing, you learn customer service, relations. I set our whole restaurant up on desktop and bookkeeping and turned us from pen and paper to bookkeeping. And like, here I am years later, like I have my own business doing bookkeeping and accounting. It's kind of funny, but it was some great insight and great experience. And I can overlook the dark times now. I would never recommend a child to go work for their family without working for someone else first. So it was a big learning curve. I wish I could have grown professionally and matured rather than under the eye of the owner's daughter, and with the being in your 20s and running a restaurant, like a big restaurant, a lot of volume of business in South Florida. So but yes, I would definitely give great advice to people of just don't join your family business without working for someone else for a minimum of time.
Smart. I think everybody should actually work in a restaurant for at least 6 months somewhere in their career, because I think it teaches you so much. So Tammy, Linda doesn't know I'm going to call on you, but I actually like to call on you as a employee for somebody, right? To hear your feedback of what it's like to work for family. And then, because both we are accountants, Rich, in a bit, I'd love to hear from you or anybody else who'd like to also kind of give us a little bit of guidance on what, like, there's certain tax benefits of hiring your kids as well we should bring up to some extent, right? So, but Tammy, tell us the horrible stories about working for Linda, please.
Ooh,
Stories.
so many. Where do I start? I'm here to make sure she doesn't say too many bad things about me that's the first part. But no, I don't think it's bad at all. I think that it's she will give me the crappy jobs to do, that's for sure. She likes to push off the tedious things on me. But that's about it. I think it's good.
What do you think, Aiden? Is it good?
I didn't even see you.
I didn't see
He
you.
needs a raise, he said. He needs a raise.
I was going to ask Alexa.
He said, give my mom more money. She needs a bonus.
Goodbye. I said, I was going to ask Alexis, did your mother ever say, if you said, why do we have to do it this way? Did she ever say, because I told you so? Because I've done that to Tammy, because I said so.
My mom didn't give me much guidance. She would let me do it wrong, and then she would show me how to fix it. And that's honestly how I learned, is the fixing part of it. She would say, here's what I need to be at the end. And I would, do my tinkering, figure it out. And then
Sound
I learned
familiar,
really well
Linda?
that way.
Oh, I was going to say,
Yeah, I don't get training.
I don't have time. You already been trained.
I also put a comment a note in the comments, is like, your mom's giving you that stuff because she trusts you with that tedious stuff. It's a trust thing too.
Yeah. I do the same. We actually listen to my mother quite a bit.
You do. You better.
My mom
It's
influences
also the path of least resistance.
Mhm.
It truly is. Sometimes you just push to the familiar
Yeah.
rather than.
Her mom is so cute though, because I don't see her. We've like moved her off camera and I can hear them. I call them the Smurfs. I can hear them talking with her sister. And then every once in a while I'll be on a meeting and the meeting will end and I'm back on with Sarah. And then I just hear her mother and I'm like, what did she just say? And she'll come over and she'll say, I would not take that from that person. You don't want to work with them. And I'm like,
Yeah, my
kind of
mom. So, I mean, Alexis, I think it's awesome to hear your story. I do treat my mom very much like she's a partner in Vintage Labs. I do not really, even though she works for me, but she's very much, she just watches me run this line. And then at some point she'll say, all right, enough. I had enough. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was in trouble.
Surprise.
Surprise, yeah. But she does it with Linda and I too. And it's amazing, her insight. She'll pick up things that I'm like, I never thought I heard that in that conversation.
She listens.
Yeah. So it's valuable. I love that you work with your mom and that she's with you as a partner. And it's awesome.
That's one of the things I was about to say, is that, I'm sure you just kind of acknowledge and appreciate, is that unique relationship empowers her to help cover blind spots you may not know you have, right? At least I'm speaking for myself, for my mom. She doesn't work for me, but she is my biggest proponent, supporter out there. And she knows extremely everything I'm doing and will try to motivate me a certain direction. So Sarah, I'm sure, does that also with your mom, would you agree to that? Is that a positive working with family?
Oh yeah. Part of it too, I'll be full disclosure, it's nice to have her challenged and appreciated where she has worked in corporate and not have ever felt that. Because of so many reasons, which I'll just keep it at that. But I feel like here's a chance to take pieces that you excelled in part components. Because geez, you raised 3 kids. Why can't you do this, Mom? Is kind of what I say. But her intellect. And so, yeah, Matthew, I do find that there are days where I was like, do I want to share this with her? Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And she'll know intrinsically something's off or it just feels amiss. And she'll ask. We did have a client that my mom was repeatedly, I know exactly, Richard, repeatedly giving Linda and I a very hard time. And one day my mom just called it. She kind of cursed it out, like she was like swearing and very upset with this person. And she's like, you and Linda need to make a decision. And I thought, oh, wow, okay. She was right. And we did. And we made a decision and the client got scared and asked us to hire him back. But my mom was the one that was like, this is it, game over. And which was appreciative. So that kind of, without asking, that was there. And I guess I kind of expected it, but I didn't anticipate that loud voice in the room. So,
but also, Sarah, in the beginning, when we first started and we got the first client and then we went to the next one, what do you think about what should we price that? Now we're like these superstars, we got to price more. And we would come up with a number and then off in the background, you'd hear,
that's not
she'd
enough.
add to it. She would add to it. And we're like, what did she just say? And it worked. She just kept raising our prices for us.
Well, she knew the value of the work. That was the appreciative part. She knew, Sarah, you know you're going to take that much time. You're going to take X time. So that kind of thing. So
I know. It's funny.
Rich
though.
has got his hand raised. I'm dying to know.
I was just going to say the same thing. Rich,
Yeah.
you're up.
It's interesting. I'm an accountant and I deal with all this family type relations. And
Yeah.
I'm looking at it here, and the way that you guys get along with your families is absolutely so marvelous. And I'm seeing a lot of this is parent-child. When you get siblings involved,
Yeah.
it's the most hardest thing. It's how the family dynamic, how the parents raise their children. If you have utmost respect for your parents and you have utmost respect for your siblings, your brother, your sister, they're your best friends, that type of dynamic is going to work a lot better than the kids that feel they're entitled to get from their parents. Their parents own a business, they're entitled to be in that. And the parents, depending on the dynamics of the parents, sometimes they feel bad for the kids and they hire the kids, they give them a fancy title. And frankly, they're not at that level at all. And if you got a brother or a sister, he got $10. Why didn't I get $10? They have all this squabbling. And I see this a lot of my clients with the dynamics of it really can kill a family dynamic if they don't get along. You don't start out at the bottom and work your way up and have respect for your parents. Oh, my parents hired me. I want to go to QuickBooks Online, and the father's used to using desktop, and you get this thing where they push other, and that's when I think it all falls apart. And I'm looking here, you guys all have that good dynamic, all that respect for your parents. And that's why I'm not seeing here anyone, oh, my siblings are here, I hate them, they shouldn't be on. I'm not seeing any of that. So that's a very good positive step. And if other people could chime in, if they have siblings and, how their family dynamics is working for them.
I love the point, and it makes me think with my own twin sister right now. She's starting up a
Your
business.
twin?
Yeah, my twin.
I didn't even know you were a twin.
You're a
He has a
twin?
better beard than I do, though. She's just kidding. She knows I joke that way. Trying to find the best dynamic to be able to work with her, because especially as twins, there's sometimes as an unspoken competition, and my ultimate goal is to help support her goals and her dreams however I possibly can. But more like Nancy, I want to actually go to you and hear what you love to hear what you have to share, of course. Thank you, everybody, for contributing.
Nancy, you're muted.
Nancy, Alt S or Alt A, Nancy. By the way, Nancy, it's good to see you.
So in the meantime,
we'll come back to Nancy.
Yeah, we'll come right back to you, Nancy, in just a quick
left.
Of course. I saw Alexis, I saw you kind of shaking your head there a bit in agreement and with family, everything else. Anything else to kind of add, or what was stirring in your mind at the time there?
Well, I have my little brother working for me. He does not do accounting. He does our marketing and visuals and videos and stuff like that. And he's my little brother. So it's sometimes I want to just slug him, because he's my little brother. And other times I'm just so proud of the stuff that he puts out. He's like 12 years younger than me. So he's like my little brother. He's like, I practically raised him. But I worked with my other brother too, the middle brother, and he had that entitled kind of disposition that Rich was talking about, like, this is going to be my business. And, he would make decisions. He would let people walk out the door without paying the bill. He was doing that kind of stuff. So siblings, I think, is very different than parent-child relationships. And I think the competition between siblings is kind of always there, kind of like Matthew said, and maybe it's a little bit more with twins, I don't know, but I think it's just a matter of, when you bring them in, it's like, okay, there's home, and then there's business, and at business, these are the rules, whatever it might be. But yeah, I even see it with clients too. I think my history of having family and business, just taking that into clients, it's crazy the things that you see if rules are not laid down properly. I mean, that's Just that's the way it really, really should be. And nobody should come into a business being a CEO because they are birthed by somebody.
Agreed. I will say in my own experience when working with a sibling, the only way that we could communicate the differences between family and work was, and we actually made a joke out of it, but then got the actual props to say that we're, the brother hat is on and the sales director hat is on.
Mhm.
And so it made a very clear line of who was talking and at what time. And we needed it because it ultimately was not a great scenario for either of us. We found ways though to make the good times good.
Danielle, I hope you don't mind. I'd asked Rachel if she wanted to share. If I go to her first, then I'd love to go over to you if that's okay. Rachel, you had mentioned in the comments that you work for your older brother's business, and you said it's going great. We'd love to hear your how it's working for you.
Yeah, it's going really well. My brother has a CPA firm, and previously my little sister worked for him doing bookkeeping and admin, and then she really enjoyed it, but eventually she had to move on. So he hired somebody else to take the position, and then he ended up splitting the job with bookkeeping in one area and another job for admin. And I was looking for a job at that point, and he had mentioned to our mom that he was looking for an admin person. And of course, our mom's like, "Oh, you should just call Rachel," because I have a 2-year-old, and so I was looking for something work from home, and he called me, and I've been working for him since mid-October, and it's going so well. Like, I get to do the admin stuff, and it's been really, really wonderful. Just to like walk in and be trusted is one of, I think, the best things about working for family, is that you're not like, "Oh my gosh, what are they going to think of this?" Or, it's just like, "Oh, hey, Rachel, can you take care of that?" Sure. So that's been really, really cool. And getting to learn a new area, because I'm from nursing, so it's totally different than admin for a CPA firm. But it's been really, really cool to get to learn and to use, the skills that I have outside, like a little bit of graphic design and that kind of stuff. So just really, really great.
Got to be empowering. Thank you for sharing that. That's, it's got to be empowering to have that support behind you, that trust into to make the decisions and kind of push forward on things. So that's awesome. Danielle.
Nobody's mentioned working with a spouse. Is that taboo? Is that something that we're not going to dig into?
Well, Donna just mentioned the comments that in one of her businesses, she had to fire her husband, but they're still married, if that helps. So, I don't know, Ken, do you have something that
I was going to say, Ken, mine worked for me for just a small bit, and he does the extra work, but he doesn't do the accounting work anymore. No more. So, yeah. But we do have 2 sisters that work for us, and they're the other twins. So of the twins, we have another twin, my mom's sister, and we're like sisters. So we have that dynamic going on as well. It's crazy.
I brought my own husband in, I think in year 2, to help me out with a conference. Following that event, he was banned from working with me for the next 7 years. He had to really beg to come back, and we put some ground rules in play, because there's always there's a very different dynamic. It's like, what are you doing hanging out until 1 a.m. at the bar? What? You don't get to tell me how to hang out at a conference. That's my world. That's what I do. And it was just, he was not prepared for it. Now, I will say, I didn't prepare him for what a conference was like. So there was a lot of fault here. But, the fight in the lobby was definitely the tipping point for me. But now, fast forward 7, 8 years later, and he's a bright and shining star at every roundtable event, because he's recognized what he needs to have his role be. And he's actually the one that came to me. I did not ask him to come back. I was like, nope, we're done. And we're both business owners, and I do not get involved in his business in any way. In fact, I do business coaching, and he is a business coach. That's not me, because we keep a line and we keep things separated, knowing that that's the way to keep a happy marriage.
I think that's pretty impressive. I've told you many times, listening to your relationship, it's pretty powerful. So, Danielle, you've been so kind and patient. We'd love to hear what would like to share with us, of course.
My gosh, so many of these stories are resonating with me because I did work with my husband also. We had a construction company for 4 years, but it was great. I look back on that period fondly, but it was very defined, clear roles. He was the general contractor. He ran that. I ran the office. So that was great. But I was thinking of what Rich was saying, and he was kind of admiring some of the relationships and that you guys have talked about with like Sarah and Linda and your families and Alexis and her mom. So much has to do with the foundation first of that relationship. And I love my father. He's still with me or with us, but I didn't have a great foundation with him in terms of he had only worked for himself with his 5 brothers in the business, just didn't go to college, didn't have some other experience. So there was some dysfunction in our relationship, and not in a, we loved each other, but just of how you communicate. So that just made it really rocky. So there just wasn't a level of professionalism there that he knew that I knew at that time. So the foundation of the relationship, I think, can make for better working relationships if you have that in the first place. And in my case, it was just really hard. And then, you don't have to have a spouse work in your business. You can have like my mom who would call and say, where's your dad? What time's he coming home? I'm like, oh, dad's at the bar. Just dad loved to socialize and drink with the patrons. He wasn't like drunk at the bar. He would like to stay at work more than he liked to stay with my mom. That was just a fact. And so then you have that dynamic in there. So it's crazy. But I like what Rich said, that I do respect some of the stories I've heard today and envy that, and it is doable and possible.
If you get a dynamic where you look to learn from your parent, rather than say, I know it, you don't, it becomes a better working relationship.
Isn't that the key? Like, if we're able to help teach others, I always still believe that that's usually when we learn the most ourselves. So you have to have that kind of open mindset to kind of go both ways with it. While I was listening to Danielle, I was also thinking back on, we've all had the nightmare stories of the family member who's trying to do the books for the family business. If you've ever had one of those, raise your hand. Right? So we know like this stuff exists, and sometimes there's good times, sometimes there's bad times. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about the accounting aspect of this. And this is an area where I don't do taxes, so I'm definitely not an expert on it. I know there are benefits of hiring children, tax benefits that way, but also even just hiring a family member as payroll, everything else. Rich, I know you can speak to it, but anybody else want to talk about like the value that can be added by working with families this way, possibly? We'll let you start, Rich.
The tax effects of it. There is no labor laws as to how young a person has to be to put them on payroll. If you have an organization that's making money and you're looking for like extra tax write-offs, if you have the funds, it would behoove you to put your children on the payroll. And it's for two good reasons. For the business, they get the deduction of the payroll, the gross wages, and they get the deduction of the payroll taxes. So that reduces their taxable income. For the kids, the standard deduction is about $14,000 now that they get. Now, depending if they have any other Investments, interest income, that your max that you want to be on everything, your adjusted gross is 14 or less, it's tax-free. So the only thing that they would have to pay then is their share of Social Security and Medicare. There's and state taxes, but on the federal side, the first $14,000 is complimentary. There is no federal tax to a child on that. Another thing that I advise my clients is if you have funds and you can give them a gross salary of around 22, 23, whatever the limit, and you have a 401k plan or they can, for like a 401k, because that gives you the most, put them on payroll, put them on the 401k, their wages come off, so the wages aren't taxable, but then they've started a nice income into their retirement plans at an early age, which obviously when they get to be 59 and a half, it's going to have grown a lot. So they get that benefit. You do basically take all no federal withholding, you'll have to pay Social Security and Medicare. And depending on the state, there's usually depending on the state, whether there's a state tax, but they get basically a zero check, and the funds then are deposited into the 401k plan and they can begin growing. And those are two benefits that you have for putting kids on your payroll. And there is no minimum age of when they can work. Obviously, if you're throwing them on payroll and they can do some stuff around the place, every kid wouldn't like a check. So that would be nice to have them on there.
Is there a maximum age? Because I think I'm very childish at times. Like, is there a maximum age the person has to be or can be?
In your case, we'd fire you in an instant.
Okay, never mind.
First 14,000 or so. And I must caveat that because that was one of the laws that Trump put in place. And those laws are set to expire December of 2025. Now, unless Congress renews that, it may go back to the old ways of having a lower standard deduction, putting kids back on as exemptions, unreimbursed business expenses could pop back in the picture. It all depends whether Congress is going to renew that. Obviously, it depends on what happens in November and for what happened last night too. But, we have to wait. It's a wait and see if they're going to continue on with those tax laws that are due to expire.
Obviously the one difficulty with this concept is it assumes that you have enough income in the business to pay out to a family member.
Correct. And if you're losing money, you don't want to do this.
Yeah. So, that's one aspect you kind of keep in mind, but it is, we all work for a reason, right? Of course, besides paying the bills, I think it's to improve the quality of life. I don't have kids at this time, so I can't speak to that, but I know if I had the opportunity to, I would be trying to contribute towards some kind of retirement or college fund or something of that nature to help them have greater opportunities. So I think it's just something to learn a little bit more about. Leah, you were asking a good question. So is this capable to be done? Same thing with an S Corp, anybody who is capable answering tax-wise? Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, good. So how many here people are doing tax themselves?
Who are you talking to, Matthew?
Everybody. Anybody who's doing tax, handles tax. Okay.
Great.
Perfect. Again, the area I'm not quite as comfortable with to try to make sure to help get people more information as well. So, so to bring it back, I guess, to family again, Sarah, have you you're working with different members of your family, right? Are your kids interested in joining into the family business also?
He's been on payroll. I'm in the rich camp of, he's worked for me. I track time and do all of that, but yeah, he's done some payroll for clients. He's done all kinds of stuff, but, my wish for him, so I worked for my uncle when I first started out, and that's probably a good thing because now my wish for my son is go work for somebody else which he has done, come back and see what you like about what I do. My desire will not be to give him the business, that he will find your own way. If you are interested, then you must meet criteria to come and do that and run my company. But I'm not going to just be like, you're my son, so here you go. Sorry, that's not how it works here.
I really respect that. I think that's a great point that, and you know, it's kind of touched base on earlier, is the idea that, you know, those, when we work hard for the things we have, obviously we're all entrepreneurs here. We are all focused and driven. That's why we do what we do. It's great to be able to provide these opportunities, but if they don't put the love and interest into it, what's going to happen? Right.
Well, I think legacy firms is what I call them.
Okay.
The individual that's getting the legacy needs to want that. I'm not, it's just by nature, you're not going to be given it. Sorry. That's just not okay for me. Yeah, I totally, and I've watched that through my family and I watch it through clients, and those, unfortunately, the sad part is you watch a company fall in demise because the child does not have the care or the wherewithal to do what you want them to be doing in that business. So I didn't work this hard to just be like, here you go. No, I'd rather sell it and enjoy the fruits of my own labor.
I can't tell you how many people I work with that say they ultimately want to leave the business to their kids, but they're just not sure if the kids want it.
No,
And
I don't want to do that to them either.
I always respond very similarly to you. It's like, why would you leave it to them then?
Yeah.
You know, you have a love for this business. That's why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't even tell if they want it,
No.
figure that part out.
Well, no, they have to show it to me, is what I'm saying, Richard. You want
earn
this?
it.
This is not a golden ticket. Sorry.
Oh, I
Yeah.
could not agree more. I think that, you know, I'm one of those that I hope my mom spends her last dime on the last, you know, on her last day on this earth.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I'm entitled to anything. It just doesn't need to be that way.
Mhm.
You know, you're saying the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard because we see this in legacy firms on the legal side, which is a natural progression, right? But then you hear the kind of what Rich was saying, the lack of appreciation just because they're the child, they get it. There's no, okay, well then the whole thing falls apart because there's no respect for that individual. So yeah, just having the background to know it.
So maybe you guys can help provide me some guidance or advice out of this. And it's one of the things I was very interested about this topic. Somewhat correlates. I'm now at a point as my parents are getting older, starting to help and take over things for my father and, you know, the properties they have. And in a sense, he is my boss. I'm having to learn how to communicate with him and make sure I check my ego at the door, even if he flares his at times. Any suggestions or guidance of how to communicate well with parents to maintain the relationship, but get the job done?
I have a really good one.
Okay.
Even if you know they are wrong, just listen to them. Just hear them out. You know exactly what they're going to say because they're your parents. Hear them out and then say, okay, I hear you. What do you think if we did this thing? You know, whatever it might be. Here, you got to hear. That's one thing I have to do with my mom, which is really hard for me because I am like, I got stuff to do. I got stuff to do. You know what I mean? But so I have to sit and listen to her 20 minutes explaining whatever it might be. And then I just kind of move on and okay, so that's, I hear what you're saying, but I'd like to try this. So that's my first suggestion.
Thank you.
I'm also going to say, and the title sounds very manipulative, Matthew, but the title of the book that I'm currently reading is called Flip the Script, Getting People to Think Your Idea is Their Idea. So read this, there's some great connective tissue on what you're talking about. Because I think with parents on anything, it is about validating that their ideas have merit, but also sometimes it's about turning your idea into their idea.
One of my favorite moments with my mom, and it's interesting, like with parents, you can have different relationships, different communication, is why I'm going to share this part of it. Is there was a point in time she was living with me in my place, and she was actually helping at the very beginning of the creation of Parkway. And in a small environment and you butt heads, that's very easy to have happen. And there was this one time I was on with a client of mine, Antoinette, that after I got off the call, she came into the room and she said, "I finally get it." I'm like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" She's like, "Get it. This entire time, I thought you were talking down to me, but you were trying to motivate me." And that moment transformed the relationship dramatically and changed the way we're able to communicate back and forth. So I keep hoping I can find that same moment with my dad as well. But I think it takes both parties when it comes to family. You guys would agree, right? To get to that breaking point or that time.
But there has to be that, you said, there has to be the level of respect that you need to have for your parents. And I think of that with my dad with some properties as he's aging. I'm wondering about how he's handling them, but I'm not going to treat him like a child. And I think that will be key for me to start taking over what he's doing and monitoring him as he's aging, as I'm seeing him at 85 years old. So I see people kind of start talking down to their parents like a child, and I can't do that with my dad. That's not right. He's got himself where he was because he has worked hard. Yes, he can be a pain in the butt, but he is a human first, and besides my dad. So I need to defer to him. And like Alexis said, have good communication, but having that deference and deferring to him, I think makes a difference in communicating with him.
What happens, and this is not an angle I intended for us to go down, but what happens when there is, because I'm seeing it in my widespread family very much, cognitive decline, but they haven't owned it or acknowledge or are aware of cognitive decline and are making decisions that are very detrimental to the
Correct.
business.
It's like when you want your parents driving and you want to tell them, "Hey, you need to stop driving."
Had that conversation recently. Yep.
Tough thing. And you're working and they're just
yeah.
not making the right decisions. It's time to retire.
I was thrown out of the house after that conversation. I'm just saying it. But I came back the next day, but I was definitely
Tough one.
thrown out that night. It was like, you need to leave.
Mine included profanity as we almost ran a red light. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
right?
mine was as we crossed 3 lanes of traffic without, recognizing that 2 of those lanes were going the opposite way.
So as we're getting close to the end of this, I wanted to bring in Kaylee Hansen to provide a bit of the HR perspective of this as well. We talked about the tax side, but what about the HR side? Any suggestions from your company as to how to best manage this type of a relationship?
Oh man, I feel like we could have another webinar all about the HR side. Quick introduction, really quick before I get to that. My name is Kaylee Hansen. I'm the marketing campaigns manager here at GoCo, and I just want to say a big thank you to Forwardly for asking us to co-sponsor this webinar here today. GoCo is an all-in-one HRIS, so we do everything from benefits to payroll to time tracking, onboarding, offboarding, all of that beautiful stuff in between. But the world of HR, accounting, all of that is so vast. So we just thank you for allowing us to be here today. And It's hard because I have never really worked one-on-one with family before. I have a dad who owns a business, and he always is trying to get me to, work on the weekends with him or just come in after work and help him with a couple things. And I've never really known the right process to take the discussion or the right things to take him. So I've gotten so many great tips from this webinar today to just be able to finally sit down with him and be like, Dad, I love you so much, but here are the reasons why, or here are the reasons that I think that we should just keep our father-daughter relationship as a father-daughter relationship. So thank you all so much for all the great insight today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm sure there's definitely some aspects of HR of having, would you have had certain clause in your employee handbook? Should you, or is that seems, I don't know, am I being silly to think that?
No, that's a great question. I mean, we've seen a lot of the times it's a
Talk about singling, like if I get singled out as a parent, like, hey, here's a paragraph just for you, mom. That probably may not be received the best way, I would assume.
Actually, sorry, my Alexa decided to go off the second that we started talking. But no, we see it a lot of the times, especially in, I know that we were talking about spousal relationships earlier. That's where we see a lot of companies with HR try to figure out different clauses to put in or different things to say, do we allow relationships? Do we allow, your spouse to work with us? If so, is it in different departments? Can you work in the same department? So we definitely see that a lot with the relationship aspect in terms of spouses, not as much with family, but definitely with the spouses.
Thank you.
Of course.
I'd love to open up real quickly here and final thoughts from everybody here. Thank you to everybody, of course, for contributing. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Sarah, for helping to get the conversation started and sharing your experiences. It takes a lot to be open that way, so I truly appreciate it. So any final words from anybody? Last suggestions?
I would like to add, just to sum this up, the one common theme that I've heard and listened to throughout this entire hour is know what you're getting into.
Yeah.
And I think there was the other common theme and thread is communicate. Whether it is parent, child, spouse, or brother, spouse, sibling, just communicate. Don't assume, always communicate.
Well said.
This has been a good family type webinar today. But man, we're going to have to tell you, we're just going to have to let you go today. Sorry.
Sorry. I knew it was going to happen. At least I get employment now too. So that's good. Sarah, you look like you were going to try to add something right before Rich. Did you have something you wanted to add real quick?
Oh, no, I think what you just summed it up is great. I mean, I have cousins, I have spouse, son, so many, my family relatives, my aunt works for me. So yeah, it is. Communication is, and we may not communicate well. I'll be the first to admit sometimes it's terrible, but at least you admit and you're very, what do you call it? Transparent. That's the word I'm looking for. Just being transparent with where you're at. So we can support each other for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining. Jane, thank you to Fordley for helping to sponsor again this series. I do want to add, we actually, while we have quite a few series and episodes already planned out, this is all about you all in this community. It's less about us. So if you have a topic that you feel would like us to talk about or introduce, please feel free to reach out and talk to me about it, and we can see how we can fit it into the mix. We're here to help elevate and lift everybody else's voices as much as possible. So next month, we will have Ingrid Edstrom with us talking about sustainable and ethical business practices. I'm excited for that. And as you know, thank you again for joining us. As always, I'd like to wish you all a very